Hi friends, it's SURABHI and I'm here to talk to you about postpartum postures. I'm going to wait a couple seconds for people to join in, and I had a bunch of questions from postpartum mamas anytime in the first 6 months postpartum. Hi there, and please ask questions if you have any questions about postpartum postures, aches and pains you're having while holding your baby, carrying your baby, breastfeeding, pumping, bottle feeding. Do ask it in the chat. I received a bunch of questions via DM yesterday and over the past few weeks. So I'm going to be talking about postures and how to prevent if you can, but also manage aches and pains. Common areas of pain are neck and shoulders and your wrists, as well as your lower back. Because we go from, when we're pregnant, we go from not having to carry anything in our arms to suddenly babies out of our bodies, and now we're holding baby up here all of the time when they're feeding, when they're sleeping, pretty much like majority of the day. As baby gets older, they also get heavier. So your muscles gain strength, and they have to gain strength to accommodate carrying the baby. Hey friends, welcome. We're chatting about postures to prevent pain postpartum. So I have my trusty assistant Owl over here, and we are going to use Owl as a newborn baby. And I'm going to show you ways that you can carry a newborn to minimize aches and pain. So first, newborn babies we're holding at our chest. So not on the side of our hip like we hold older babies and toddlers. When you're holding your newborn at your chest, your core postpartum is going to feel really weak because you've either had an incision from a cesarean section, or you've just been stretched to the max for up to 9-10 months. And now your core muscles are like super stretched. Think about an elastic band that's super stretched. It has less tension. You have to wrap it up many times around a bottle in order to feel like it's securing that, the hair tie or bottle, right? So our muscles are the same. We have to allow time for the muscles to recover, to kind of shrink back, and they may never shrink back to the same degree that we had pre-baby. But what we need to do in those early postpartum months is to start to connect with our abs and to strengthen our abs. Hey Rena. So let's say you have a newborn, and let's say you have a cesarean section. You may have a lot of incisional pain right here and discomfort. So typically in the first few weeks, we do recommend, in the first few weeks, we do recommend relative rest. I know that that's not always possible. It's not like you can just like sit around all the time, especially if you don't have family or partner support or community around you to help provide meals and just support, right? So you are going to hold baby like this. You're going to hold baby not just with your hands, your delicate hands. You're going to hold baby with your arms. So you're going to try to tuck baby as close to your body, giving them a bear hug. And you're going to hold just your hand to support the head, right? We don't need our hands and our wrists. These are small joints. We don't want to be lifting and carrying with just the small joints. We want to let our bigger muscles, like our biceps, right? Big pipes here. We want to let our bigger muscles do the work to take the pressure off these smaller, dinky little muscles in our hands and wrists, right? Our hands are really good at like fine motor skills, chopping, writing, knitting, playing an instrument. They're not the best at like picking up heavy objects unless you've trained for it. And if you're a new mom, you're exhausted, you're sleep deprived, your sleep quality is awful. So your recovery time is going to take longer. So we want to minimize these stressful positions on our wrists and hands as much as possible. Once you have de Quervain's or mommy thumb, it is a pain in the butt, right? So we want to prevent you getting there at all. And if you already have it, this is still going to help you, right? So here I'm barely using my wrist. My arm is also in a neutral position. I'm not hanging in the floppy wrist position. We want no floppy wrists while carrying, right? So we want to have our hands in this position as much as possible when we're carrying, whether we're switching arms when one arm gets tired or the other way. And of course, you're not pressing your newborn right into your chest. You do want them to have a little bit of breathing space, right? So you're just gonna do it this way. Now, when you're standing, our tendency postpartum is gonna be doing this, butt tucked in, hips thrust forward for most people. And the reason is, again, when we're pregnant, everything is stretched out, and suddenly that tension inside your abs is gone. Baby's up, right? So now your abs are going to feel even weaker than they did during pregnancy, far weaker, right? Especially in those early postpartum weeks. So it's going to feel like work just to stand up. And so this is going to be one of your exercises, is to just go from here to here, where your pelvis is more below your rib cage rather than thrust forward. This is gonna feel like a workout. You might last 30 seconds, and that's okay. That's one set of your workout. So throughout the course of your day when you're carrying baby, think about, okay, I gotta get my exercises in. Surabhi said to stand like this. And I'm not like poking my butt out. You're literally just preventing your hips from sliding forward, tucking your butt under, and you're going to bring that in line. If you have any questions, friends, ask them in the chat. We're talking about postpartum, carrying baby, seeing how we can minimize stress and pain in the lower back, wrists, and neck and shoulders. Those are the common areas of pain with lifting and carrying baby. So you're rocking baby, you're walking around, thinking about standing upright, preventing those hips to slide forward. What you're gonna find is walking is easier than just like standing in one spot, because when we stand in one spot, we tend to go slump into one hip, slump into the other hip. And that's okay. It's not like it's, evil to slump on one side, but if you're always doing the same side, and if you're never alternating sides, your body's gonna start to feel it. So that's my second tip. My first tip was slide your hips so that they're underneath your rib cage. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than what you're currently doing. If you're not doing this, and if you're finding you're already upright, amazing. Keep that up. So if you are on, hi friends, if you are on one hip most of the day, maybe your one side is dominant, stronger, your exercise is going to be to switch to the other side. Again, if you hold it for 30 seconds, 1 minute before you hit fatigue, that's fine. That's one set of an exercise. Just like doing bicep curls. It's not like you're doing bicep curls all day to strengthen your biceps. You might do a set of 10, 15 reps. That might take a minute and then you're done. Or you might do 2 or 3 sets of that. And you're still gonna be strengthening your biceps. In the same way, in order to strengthen our lower back and our hips and our abs, we don't have to have perfect posture all day. Even just changing the sides so that you're standing in the middle, right? With your weight even on both feet. That itself is a strength exercise for most people postpartum. So let's go back to what we talked about. If you have a cesarean incision, it may feel really hard. Some things that can help is having some kind of supportive, like high-waisted pants that aren't excessively compressive that you're not able to breathe. We don't want to restrict your breathing at all, because our breath is deeply connected to our core, our abs, and our pelvic floor function. If you're wearing like a brace or a belt that like really shrinks your abs, it doesn't actually. But if it's marketed to do that, what's happening is sometimes you're restricting your rib cage. So you're trying to breathe in and you can't breathe in. And when your diaphragm, which is your breathing muscle, cannot fully expand, that has a direct impact on your abs and on your pelvic floor. So if you have a pelvic organ prolapse, if you had episiotomy, if you had stitches, if you had any kind of pelvic floor leaks, that pressure constantly can make it worse. If you have a diastasis recti, you may think, oh, I'm just gonna wrap this up and that's gonna help. That doesn't help your muscles get stronger. All that does is temporarily squeezes your midline, right? So use a belt around not your abs necessarily, but around your pelvis if it helps your pubic symphysis pain or SI joint pain. Many people find that it actually makes it worse. So the only way to know is to try. So supporting your incision with undergarments that can add a gentle amount of compression, especially if you've had a cesarean, can help. If you've had an episiotomy or tearing with stitches, remember that gravity tends to pull everything down. So if you're always standing, always sitting on your butt, that's gonna add a lot of pressure there too. This is why early postpartum, we ask you to rest. And when we say rest, we don't mean like do the dishes or do the laundry. It literally means lie down. You don't have to sleep. You can lie down with your baby and just put your feet up. Hey, Holly. And just put your feet up to take that pressure off of your pelvic floor and in your butt. Because if you're sitting all day when you are healing after a tailbone injury or episiotomy or any kind of pelvic floor issues or incision, it's not gonna feel good. It's just gonna feel like more pressure. Okay, so going back to postures, 2 main things we've talked about is when you're carrying, untuck that butt, hips, pelvis underneath your rib cage, even if it lasts 30 seconds before you feel like you have to slump forward, that's okay. That's one set of the exercise. You can repeat that set throughout the day. And then the second was if you were a side hip person, bringing that back to the middle, right? And using that as a repetition, or even just switching sides to the other side once in a while so you're not always on the same hip when you're standing. So you'll notice that part of this conversation is bringing awareness to what you're currently doing. If you're not even aware of what you're currently doing, it's really hard to change what you're currently doing. It's impossible because you're not going to know what you need to change. So, and then the third thing we talked about is when you're carrying a newborn, especially using bigger muscles like your biceps to cradle the baby, to snuggle baby up, and using your hand in a neutral position, not floppy, and keeping your hand and wrist neutral to do the carrying load. This will go a long way, whether you're sitting or standing. Notice one more thing. I'm not drooping my shoulders down, carrying like this. But let's say I've lifted and carried my baby all day. What's gonna happen is likely to charge it. But we still have 20% left, so we're good for now. So if you're just drooping your body all the time because your postures or your gravity is winning, what we need to do is strengthen your upper trapezius. Not stretching it more because it's already stretched. We need to actually strengthen it. So one simple exercise, Viva, you asked for something like exercises to help with that. One thing you can do while you're holding your baby is literally shrug. So mini shrugs while you're holding your baby. Your baby's gonna think it's funny or wonder what is happening here. But you're holding your baby and you're using your baby as weight to do shrugs. And this is gonna start to help strengthen your shoulder. Obviously, if you want to go deep dive in further into this, and if you have pain and aches, please reach out because I offer one-on-one consults online to help deal with these exact issues. But here I'm giving some generalized information and education. Take what helps, and if it doesn't help you, you don't have to do it. So we've talked a lot about standing. I'm gonna move to the couch. I'm just gonna move this over here, and we're gonna talk about sitting, and let's say you're breastfeeding, right? So I'm gonna just tip this downward. Any questions so far from you all? Please do ask. Okay, so we got pillows. Pillows are our best friend. So we're gonna have one pillow here for my head because I don't wanna hold my head up all the time. It might seem silly because you're like, what's wrong with holding your head up? But when you're holding a newborn, like they become a dead weight really fast, right? It just feels so heavy after a while. So I am supporting my head. I've got my nursing pillow right here. And notice all these gaps, like the nursing pillow is kind of flopping around. So I'm gonna actually use this to kind of prop my leg up a little bit, or even just prop this up. And I can even use this or a towel roll to stuff it under this side. This is harder to do when you're holding a newborn, for sure, but this is what I did all the time. And then lastly, keep your water bottle handy because you're gonna get thirsty. And so this is the other thing I have is a little step stool for my feet. So I'm a short person, and so reaching the floor from the couch, like my legs are hanging, which is gonna force me to start slouching like this, which is not gonna help my lower back or my tailbone, especially postpartum. So I'm gonna sit more upright, get my butt to the very back of the couch, use a small towel roll, like a bath towel to help. I use a lot of bath towel rolls here. Right now, my son is like 17, almost 17 months. He doesn't need all the support. He just sits on my lap if I'm breastfeeding him. So you've got this baby, right? So you obviously will need to cradle their head a little bit more in the early newborn days. But as they gain head control, you can literally just keep your hands off, and then you're not really working hard here. You can just sit and you're feeling supported. If I didn't have these pillows, watch what happens. You think, oh, Surabhi's using a nursing pillow, that should be good. But now, I'm up here. So I'm gonna have to drag my neck and shoulders down to meet the pillow. That's not gonna help my neck or shoulders. And I'm gonna feel like I'm hunching forward all the time. So you have to elevate all this to meet you rather than you meeting it, okay? So that is a huge difference. Get all the throw pillows you have around, towels around, because that's gonna make a huge difference. Let's say you have an older baby that you can now cradle like this. They can just sit on your lap. I still find one of these pillows to be helpful because I can just prop it like this, prop all this here, and now I can chill, right? Because we like breastfeed, whether you're breastfeed or even just bottle feeding or sitting there pumping, you're doing it for hours a day. What you don't want to be doing is getting stuck holding and carrying for that time. Notice too, I'm not holding a baby with my wrists and hands. I see people do like a lot of hand and wrist holding. Use the bigger muscles in your biceps and your forearms, the softer muscles to cradle baby, and just use your hands gently for like a little bit of guidance. Notice again, my wrist is neutral. I'm not doing floppy wrists, right? Because that's gonna add a lot of stress through the thumb. If I'm carrying a baby, my hand is in a straight line as much as I can. I'm not gonna carry like this. I'm not doing a floppy wrist carry. I'm tucking my hands underneath, pointing my elbows down to bring baby close to me, right? So that will help your wrist and hand. And now we've talked about neck and your lower back. So those are the two major things that I want to talk about is posture and sitting and posture and standing. There's so much more we can dive into. I wanted to know what questions you have. Was that helpful, first of all, for anyone who's still watching and who's a new mama or somebody? Hey, Paula. We're talking about postures and carrying babies. So Paula was in my first round of my postpartum return to exercise program. We talked about all of these things then to help really prevent as much as possible those aches and pains. Don't get me wrong. You can be the strongest person, like an Olympic athlete. It's still going to be hard. It's not like Serena Williams popped out a baby and was like, oh, my neck and shoulders felt fine, because it's a change in load, a dramatic change in load to go from never carrying and holding a baby to then suddenly carrying that load all of the time. So it is going to be challenging, but these are ways to make your life easier and to reduce that stress and that load so that you can not, like, especially if you're having breastfeeding challenges like I did with my first, like the last thing I wanted was dealing with that and then also be in pain, right? It's like, at least your body's comfortable elsewhere. And then if you're having challenges here, you can deal with just that instead of dealing with this and everything else together. Any questions, friends? How's everyone doing? It's Friday. Are you having a good week? I know it's been a challenging week for the world. Definitely helpful. I found during my early days. Hey, Paula. Hey, Holly. Breastfeeding the cushions for support was key, especially with C-section recovery. First of all, C-section recovery is underestimated. People don't inform you like, okay, this is going to feel really hard because you literally had like a huge incision. You had a surgery and on top of 9 months of pregnancy. So helping yourself out as much as possible with those cushions. It may seem tedious because like if you look at my couch, like all of that is there all the time. So I'm not looking for a pretty couch. I'm looking for a functional couch, to have the stool, to have my water bottle, to have all the cushions handy so that I'm not like dragging myself all the time. There was a huge difference between my first child to my second because I knew all this going into my second postpartum experience. So I set myself up right from the beginning. I don't remember having any wrist or thumb pain, neck pain. And granted, there is a bit of strength that I've gained since my first child in terms of carrying. But even still, like even without that, understanding how to prevent this. I think I had a couple of questions from Viva and someone else as well. I think Marie and Sarah as well. So if you have any questions, send me a DM and review this if you haven't. If you're just hopping in now, we talked about postpartum postures to support your baby. And when you're carrying, one thing I wanted to say, let me go get my trusty owl assistant. When you're carrying a newborn, we talked about, this kind of chest carry, but when you're carrying an older child or toddler, like my child is much older, or even my 3-year-old, you're going to be carrying them on one hip, right? And so what your tendency is, you're going to carry them on your hip, and you're going to do this. You're going to sink into that one side. The problem is I'm right-handed, so I'm always using my right hand to do things, and then he's being carried on that side. This is not going to be helpful for my left lower back. It's not going to be helpful for my right abs. So strengthening both sides, doing those side planks can be really, really helpful to balance it out as much as possible. We are all imbalanced. Nobody's perfectly balanced all the time. It's impossible. We all have one side that's more dominant than the other side. But what can help is to just switch sides, like I said, for 30, 60 seconds, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and start in the earlier part of the day when your body's fresher. Start on the non-dominant side so that you get your reps in at the earlier part of the day. And then when you're tired and you're like, okay, let's go back to the side I'm comfortable with, you can do that. Right? So, sure, thrust onto the other hip for a bit, or work on your challenge of standing upright even on both legs, because this itself is a workout with the baby. With the owl, not so much. So let's actually look at it. Like, let's say I have a kettlebell, like 20 pounds kettlebell, roughly what my child weighs. This is a great exercise too, is literally just carrying and trying not to do this. Because when I do this, it's easier. I barely have to work. But trying to keep myself perfectly in line with that weight here. And just walking around and seeing if I can train myself in this position, right? I'm using a kettlebell. You can use a dumbbell as well. And working towards the actual weight of your baby is good. I find many women are carrying like 2 pounds. Like, that's just not enough. Obviously, when we start, if that's all you can tolerate, great. But we want to start challenging our bodies with some weight because we're having to do that in real life anyways. So we might as well. Awesome. Thank you so much for everyone who joined live. And if you have any questions, as always, send me a DM. I'm going to try to save this. 9 times out of 10, it works to save it, but sometimes it doesn't. So I apologize if it doesn't work. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Friday and rest of your weekend. I have no idea what we're up to this weekend, but I feel like we're counting down the days until we get to spring. So now we're like, let's get out and do winter stuff while it still lasts, because it's almost done. So anyways, bye friends. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful day.